All right. So we have one item on the agenda, I see.
Yeah, that's what as I added that.
Yeah, cool.
And then I got a pen. But I guess I can take a little bit time describing this.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Let me open some code first. Okay, can I how do I share my screen? Okay.
Yeah, there's share screen at the bottom if you hover.
Yeah, I got it. I don't have anything to present. I don't have to prepare any special thing to present.
Oh, that's fine.
I just want to bring up the proto. So can you see my screen?
Not yet.
Oh yeah, I haven't.
When it works, we will be able to see it in the
Yeah, now we see it.
Okay, so the thing I bring up I add in the agenda is about these operations. So to give a short background, to support, I good?
Hey, sorry, I'm late.
Sure, don't worry, we're all late.
Lovely, so I'm glad to hear.
So to support using stored local resource provider to create volume and destroy volume from CSI backed storage, we introduce a new type of storage source that's called raw and have also block, and then we'll introduce these operations: create volume, destroy volume, create block, and destroy block. They are so-called non-speculative operation. That means if you look at the create volume proto, like this, we specify the source, but we don't specify the target, like the outcome of that volume. We pass the source eventually to the storage local resource provider, and then it will call the CSI gRPC calls to carve out the volume, and then get the attributes and fill in the attributes and create new resource and return a resource conversion. And back in the master, we convert it to the new type of resource, and then we can offer out. So the thing I specifically want to discuss is first this. So for now, create volume we support creating. Okay, so this create volume actually converts a raw disk resource to either a mount or path disk resources. And whether we don't want to convert a raw disk resource to a mount or path is specified here. So this can only be either mount or path, and basically, well, the cert will fill in that the type, like based on this field. But while supporting path disk makes sense for local storage, it actually doesn't make a lot of sense when we're talking about like external storage. So for example, external storage, we can create a volume, but right before you want to use it, we need to mount or like attach it to a node. And if we support path disk, imagine what will happen. Like we create a volume, it's there like 10 gig. And then because path is splittable, so the firmware can say, I want to only use 5 gig. So it create it can just get a part of it and use it. But the reality, the whole 10 gig is this atomic unit, so it needs to be attached to the agent you want to consume that volume. So even though the other 5 gig looks like free from the master's perspective, they are already kind of have their own relation tied to the specific agent. So if another firmware get the remaining of the 5 gig of the path disk and say you want to use it on another agent, then there will be a problem. But right now, in our like resource abstraction, there's no way to like express there some sort of correlation between these two pieces of resources, right?
Let me rephrase what I understood.
Sure.
So you said when we create a volume and the target type is path with an external resource provider, that's something that we should not allow at all because the path is usually bound to an agent. Is that roughly what you're saying? Or are you saying?
I'm saying path by definition in Mesos definition is splittable. But
it's splittable.
Yes.
You mean the resource source type being path is splittable?
Yeah, splittable. You can just use part of it, right?
Okay.
And the remaining half that is not used by a set call will be offered out to another framework. Right?
So in an external resource provider case, when you ask it to create a volume with a target type path, where is that thing getting created? It's just it's not in any agent, right? It's getting created in external storage space somewhere.
Right. It's not creating any agent.
Any agent. And you're saying when a framework wants to use that, and it's sent as an offer, it should not be able to use only part of it.
Right.
It should only use the whole of it.
Okay. Yeah. So this is one reason that path does not really fit this use case. There's another reason that I have a brief discussion with James Peach about quota. So even if it's okay to support path on the local local storage, it would become kind of like should our isolator, like this quota isolator, accounts for the quota come from the path? Like if it's backed by a CSI volume. So because although currently because the reason I'm asking this is because like for some file system, we may use some file system specific operation to enforce quota, path quota, right? But if that something is backed by a CSI volume, maybe in the future, not now, but in the future, maybe the CSI plugin will want to may prefer like no one should touch the file system on top of that storage. It should do all the work through CSI plugin. Maybe it's not the reality right now, but it's kind of it. So if we support path, that means our disk DU disk DU isolator have we need to clearly define if it should count toward that or no, right? And it may become problematic if CSI eventually will have a new feature that want to have their own control of quota.
So you're saying it becomes problematic if someone uses part of the path resource?
Yes.
So you like for some kind of resources to use the isolator, and for other ones it should be a CSI plugin and not the isolator that tries to enforce the quota. Is that right? Or
what? Sorry.
Like for some path resources, you would like the isolator, like the DU isolator, to enforce the quota, and for other ones, that isolator should not run, and it should be the CSI plugin.
Yeah, that's the current James' current plan. That he he's updating this DU is isolated, but he planned to not doesn't count path is backed by CSI for now.
Okay.
So and so I list like two reasons about like the path introduced some kind of issues or some issues when we thinking about CSI. So I'm thinking, and another reason is like actually in from our Mesos 50 COS perspective, we're not using path for managing CSI volume at all. So I was wondering if we are okay with like just disallowing path in this API.
So is this a problem only for these new operations? What about the old operations that don't use path?
For the old operation, like if it's not backed by CSI plugin, I think it's kind of, we can clearly define the behavior. Say for this DU, we can just say, oh, we support all. This DU will account for quota enforcement for all the path disks. I think that's the intention we want to.
And also, I guess traditional resources or without CSI, you don't have the problem of having to attach something to an agent. So a path resource will always be attached or tied to
always
an
agent
agent.
Yeah.
It's local. So the other problem also wouldn't apply.
Yeah.
Won't happen.
So I have a discussion with other guys related to storage recently, and we feel like it doesn't make a lot of sense to support path here right now.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are thinking about about removing this and restricting that this operation can only carve out mount volumes. And
what are the types right now? The source types?
Right now is we accept either path or mount.
Okay, those are the only two things that are there in that enum?
Enum contains like raw, path, mount, block, and I thought I think that's those two.
And root, right?
No, root is like implicit. Now this one, let me look at and unknown.
Unknown, path, mount, and right now if someone sends mount, block or raw, you just reject it in validation?
Yeah.
And now you want to reject also path?
Yeah, and
I guess he's planning on just removing that field.
Yeah, just removing that field.
Oh, and just implicitly assume it's mount?
Yeah, and then it will also make the API cleaner. And then following this, I'm also proposing if we can change this to create mount disk, and this will be destroy mount disk, create block disk, and destroy block disk. So the reason of the name change is because we already overload this term volume in a couple of places. Now, so the create volume here is not a persistent volume, but when we say create, we are creating a persistent volume. So it's a little bit like overloaded and vague. So I feel like if we rename this to say create mount disk, it will be much cleaner in the API concern.
So what do you mean by it's not a persistent disk? So
in the storage resource provider, when we receive created volume, it just use the CS plugin carve out volume. There's no persistence metadata on that. So the workflow is more like reserve the storage pool, create a volume out of the storage pool, then call the create call to create a persistent volume on top of that mount disk.
I see. So what is that call on the CSI called?
The CSI call is called create volume.
Oh, it is called create volume.
But that volume includes both mount volume and block volume. So it's also inconsistent here. Like we call create volume, but it's only for mount or disk. And we also have another call called create block, which is for block. But in the CSI end, both mount disk and block disk are called volume.
Oh, I see. So why not call it create mount volume and block volume, and both of them call create volume with block or mount?
A type. Do you feel it's better if we have a create volume and the target type can be either mount block, or should we just say create mount disk and create block disk?
Well, I guess I'm saying, can it be create mount volume, create block volume?
Yeah, we can. I just feel like we probably. I don't know. Do you prefer the term volume over over disk?
I don't have a particular opinion, but I don't know what's the difference in this in terms of in storage systems between a disk and a volume.
Well, the reason I like we in the earlier discussion with Benjamin and others, we feel disk is slightly better because we are actually doing a resource conversion related to disk. So the resource type is disk. So why not just make it like call it disk? And then I feel like in the future we can say volume is our like something that the container use volume on top of like either this type of disk like root, path, mount, or block disk. These are volumes.
So you create volumes on top of disks. Is that the?
Yeah, you create like persistent on top of disks.
Got it.
So I also feel this terminology clarification maybe make the thing a little bit clearer.
And what about the above ones, like the grow shrink? Will they become what, volumes or disks?
This one.
I also found another question again.
Yeah.
Do we need create block and create volume, or create block disk and create volume disk, or something like that, or could you just have a create? Why do we have two different ones? And again,
well, we already have create. We cannot use the same name.
Oh, well, I mean, you can have like create disk and then like a type.
Another problem I want to do the renaming is that currently in ACL we already have create volumes, which is for this create call. Also, I want to distinguish that.
Oh, okay.
The naming is like a mess, so I want to like try to make it as clear as possible.
I guess what Justin was saying was, can we have a create maybe disk
and
have
then,
inside it enum block?
Yeah, this is another possibility we can support, but is the I think the benefits of that is that we have a one call, but the problem is that we need to like document that only these types are supported in that parameter, and we need to validate that, and users need to be aware of that. And the advantage of the other route that we have different operations for different types is that it's clear from the name. But the disadvantage is we have multiple operations. So I'm not sure which one is better.
I did not follow that. So if you have a message create disk, and inside it you have enum.
Yeah.
Enum, that's a new enum inside the create disk. It's not it's not the enum that's coming from diskinfo.source.
Oh, you mean a new enum? Yeah, we probably can also do that. But okay, but then create disk cannot create a raw disk. Because what create disk will do is convert a raw disk to a mount or block disk.
I think there's no way of creating a raw disk, right? Or is there a way of creating a raw disk?
No, there's no way. So you mean we create a new I see, create a new enum for that.
Like, can we yeah, I was thinking like message create disk, inside it there will be enum type, which is I don't know, what's it called?
So now just mount and block?
Mount and block inside it. And then you select one of those types and then resort. Is there any reason that you want to kind of distinguish those two? Are they usually going through the same paths, or are they completely different functions and stuff like that as far as Mesos master and agent are concerned, or are they like
from agents concerned, there's no concern about it, but in the let me think. Actually, there is like in the slurp, there is a bit of difference between mount and block. Like there will be some code path because they are different things.
Like I guess validation could be different or something like that.
What?
Like the validation could change depending on the type, or
yeah, the validation can change, and I guess the disk like we may
Like,
have.
is there a common validation that you could have used if there it was a one call versus two calls? Right now, I'm assuming you might have.
I see. And actually,
stuff, right?
yeah. So by combining them into a single call, then we could have a unified validation and unified code path. That's what you suggest, right?
Yeah. I mean, I haven't looked at the code, but
one disadvantage I could think of having just one API call is like you have less granularity for ACLs or something like that. I don't know where that matters, where you would just want to. So that's one of the downsides I can come up with, which I don't know whether that's an issue or not, but that's like something that would be different.
I guess you could still have multiple ACLs, and that ACLs could look at different types in the authorizer, right? It doesn't have to be that.
Can we do that right now?
I don't know. I guess there could be a way, but it won't be as straightforward as just having a name or something like that.
The authorizer.
There are only 1:1 mapping, I guess, for ACL, but there's nothing forcing that the same call cannot be looked at for two different ACL objects by the authorizer.
I think I'm kind of like derailed the conversation a bit because the idea was to see where we can change the name or need the type, but I was just wondering whether we need two different API calls or not. We might still want to rename that from way to this. But,
So it seems like it's like we reach a consensus like this. Probably we can remove it for now, and if we want to support that back, it's not that hard, and change this. But we just the only like remaining issue we want to resolve is should we make it two calls or one call with different like a parameter.
Well, I guess I'm not convinced that we really want to rename anything necessarily. And I guess I'm also wondering, so you're proposing like adding new calls and then leaving the existing calls in place and deprecating?
No, because this is experimental. I'm pretty sure no one's using this API yet. This is all experimental, and no one's using the API yet. So I would wish when we still have the chance to change it to a more like simplified API, I would prefer like just change it.
Yeah, that's one advantage of calling it experimental. So Greg, you were saying you're not convinced mainly because of backwards compatibility or something else?
Yeah, I guess I wasn't thinking of it as being experimental, but it is. So that seems reasonable.
Yeah, they're warnings everywhere. So
yeah.
So this came out in a release already, 1.6?
This is in 1.5 actually. But I'm pretty sure no one's using this API yet.
I think you should definitely send an email for one.
Yeah, I will send an email, but I want to bring up I already discussed with some folks in the storage team. I want to bring it up in this API group and reach see what's your opinion. Then I will send out an email.
So one thing you could have done is just reject the path one, right, in the types here, and just like you're rejecting raw and something else, you could have just rejected path as one option, but you didn't like it because of the ACL mapping or because of the ACL conflict or something else?
Both the ACL conflict and this naming is I just feel it's like a mess. And also, if we just support one single type here, then this parameter is not necessary, and this actually creates some, it actually makes the API looks not
well,
clean.
I guess the question is, are you planning to add support for it in the future? Do you foresee adding support for it in the future for the other types, or you do not?
If you already have if you have multiple API calls, then why won't you just add another API call instead of adding an enum there?
Yeah.
We could have create volume, create disk, I guess. You could add, create a block, right?
Yeah, we have create block.
So in the future, if you could add a new API call for the new type instead of.
So if we want to support, if we have separated API call, it's easy to add support. But also, if we have create disk with an enum there, it's also not that hard to have additional support. But it depends on if those additional type needs additional argument or not.
Yeah, I guess my main consideration would be if you start creating different operations would there be any common validation logic that you would not be able to take advantage of? Would you be like,
yeah, that's true.
Logics in master and agent? That seems to be one thing that you need to kind of consider. Like the one advantage of having a common top level proto is, I don't know. I mean, I think that's one thing that I would look at to see what's the
I see. Okay.
cost.
So I will summarize these two proposals, like one call per disk type, or like combining together and send out email to see if other people have more comment thoughts on this.
Hey, the renaming is also important to go out. Like you could.
Oh yeah, definitely.
So it's like three.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's renaming that, and then there's where we want only one API call or two ones.
And Greg, are you talking?
Yeah, sorry, Greg.
I didn't understand Vinod's last point. I was just going to ask you to clarify or repeat.
Yeah. I was saying if we have like a nested proto, where we put enums in underneath it, it's probably easier to do common validation for a create disk call versus create disk operation versus now having different operations for different types might mean that we have to write validation code separately for each of them as we add them. You won't be able to take advantage of the common create disk validation, for example. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that seems to me like something I personally wouldn't want to consider in API design.
See.
Like it seems like we could accomplish it either way. It's just a little bit easier, maybe.
Yeah, it would be like leaking some. I with Greg, it would be like leaking some implementation details in the API.
Yeah, that's true. It's true too. Would it make any change for the consumers of the API, whether it's a top-level operation or a nested one?
Yeah, I think I feel like both patterns work just as well, and maybe it's just a matter of establishing a convention and being consistent across the APIs. Like either we tend to have granular calls where we have a separate call for every action, or we have very general calls with lots of options embedded. And when I think about our APIs right now, I'm trying to do a survey in my head and see.
Yeah, can you scroll up a little bit, like look at the calls and maybe the operations?
Do you want me to scroll up further?
I guess Adinam is good. Like you see all the list of all the operations that we support right now.
Yeah, we have launch group. Like for example, for reserve, I guess we don't have things like reserve CPU, reserve mem, reserve disk, right? It's just one reserve width.
Right.
That's true. Although I could imagine having like the fact that we have both launch and launch group, like that's a splitting of that functionality.
Yeah, but I think that one came about because of some backwards compatibility issue. We could not use launch. It had different meanings.
Same as create here.
Yeah. I mean, I think, I think in terms of customers of the API, I don't know at what level we need to split versus what level we need to make them first class. I mean, first class meaning top level operations.
Yeah, I know.
Like, would we have done like reserve CPU, reserve mem, reserve GPU kind of thing?
Well, but the reservation is like generic to all resources. So I feel we don't need to distinguish that.
But creation is not generic?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, in this case, it is because this create, not creation. This create is you already have something and you're just creating a persistent volume. And I think the name is really too generic.
It just depends on, for now we are managing all the parameters through Socket profile. So there's no need to add like additional parameter. But I don't know if in the future we may have a special creative function that need to input additional parameter. But that parameter can be actually just an optional field.
You mean for create persistent volume or for create disk?
Create disk.
Okay.
I'm not sure.
We'll create volume here. Yeah.
And we would have shrink disk, or?
Well, this is kind of tricky. So what I'm imagining that in the future, what we want to do is we still call it grow volume for root and path disk, because they are already splittable. This makes sense only if we are growing a persistent volume. But for the mount and block disk that backed by CSI plugin, there's a plan to having new call that can expand volumes. So it's more like a conversion that takes mount volume and the raw disk, and then grow that mount volume to larger. And then restrict to persistent volume. No, but also actually, but I'm considering we just support growing persistent volume. Just support grow volume means we grow persistent volume, because if it's not persistent, we might not just delete it and recreate it.
Yeah, I mean, unless it's being used. If you want to grow, well, can you grow something that's currently being used?
This is something we are considering should we support, but in theory, in some files you can support that.
I guess right now with the offer model you can, because you get an offer.
You can't. So we need to find another way to support that. It cannot be done through offer operation.
Do we have, in our APIs, do we have a working definition of what is a disk versus what is a volume in these scenarios? Like in general, I think of volumes as like a persistent volume or some disk object that's decorated with some metadata. But it seems like some of the
persistent volume
in the CSI world kind of straddle both volume and disk.
Yeah, where do we introduce the concept of root, path, and other disks? Do you remember?
Look for multiple disk on that page.
Oh, then it's this one. Root, path, mount. Oh, we add this. And then we say volume is more like persistent volume for now. That's also the reason I prefer using the disk instead of volume, because we have this document saying that these are disks.
Yeah, that kind of makes sense to me. Like one definition that springs to my mind is that a disk becomes a volume when it's used by a task.
Yeah, that's also, yeah.
And so a persistent volume is a volume because it's used by a task, and then it hangs around to be used by more tasks later.
Right.
So I feel like, if that were the working definition we were going to use, then using disk in those call names makes sense to me.
Yeah, just for this conversation, thinking about disk versus volume helped me. And so if we use volume for everything, I think it's confusing. So I would support the rename.
Yeah. And we also have an operator API called create volumes.
Yeah. Oh yeah, are we going to change the operator API calls as well?
Well, you mean for these operations? We don't have any operator API support for these operations yet.
Oh, okay, not for any of them. Huh?
So what does that API call do in the current create volumes?
Create volume is create. Okay. Create persistent volumes.
So you said there's an operator API call, right?
The operator API called create volumes is for creating persistent volumes.
Okay.
I mean, there is a V0 like endpoint that you can use. I guess probably also V1, but I need to check. But
okay. It would be consistent with, so it would still refer to volume like a persistent volume and not disk. So there would be no conflict there.
Okay. So yeah. But I'm not sure if we should combine all different things into one single like top level operation or like.
But another thing that could help is thinking whether you think, so maybe think how the product would look if you had just one single operation. Would you use like the struct, the union trick that we use or something like that? Or
what do you mean by?
I guess it would help if we could imagine how that would look like.
Well, it will be just a create disk proto, which contains the source and a type which is has an enum.
But do you imagine that in the future you might have some optional parameters that depend on the type?
I'm not sure.
Because in that case, if you add them all like as a top level field, it would make it more complicated and it would be hard to have different codes. Or you could use something like the.
Well, I think if we have, I think exactly it will be simplified if we have top level. We need all these operation top levels because they are now independent.
And that's what I was saying. If we think that we might have different parameters for each different type, then it might be better to either use the union trick or have different operations. If we don't expect that, then
I cannot tell. I actually don't know.
I also don't know.
It's hard to predict the future.
Well, so maybe one thing that would help us make a decision is to just have some prospective protos written up that we could.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Okay. I actually was thinking about having a created like work in progress patch for this, but I just haven't got time to work on it yet. But yeah. Okay. I'll create a WP patch and then send it out to the dev and user. Probably just dev mailing list. For
I guess you could add either 2 points to that mail or send 2 emails, one for the renaming and the other one for that. I think those are like 2 different points that we want to discuss. I think the renaming would be easier to get consensus on.
Yeah, but what to rename, right? It's basically, yeah.
Well, they could be like you could in your proposal already use the new names and then address that that way.
And say that this is experimental and hopefully no one is using it. Yeah. So I want to fix that as soon as early as possible. Don't leave any legacy like that.
Yeah, I think my feeling at the moment anyway is that a single message kind of makes sense. When I think about our other calls, it seems like they tend to have an action and then like one object that you're performing that action on. And then anything more specific in that is in the metadata. Like you launch a task or you launch a task group, resources. But when it comes to the particular type of resources or the particular metadata about your task, that's embedded in the call.
Like one small opinion I'd like to bring up is, I didn't formally confirm with James yet, but it seems he prefer a way to have like, when you use the API, prefer to have shorter like access path. What I mean is instead of like operation dot create dot whatever dot copy from something, it seems my perception is like he thinks probably like shorter overall access path is easier. It's cleaner for API concern. That's what I get from his some comments, but it's just vaguely, I have this vague impression about this.
Right, talking about how do we refer to that particular thing? If it's a lot of nesting, that will be a lot of dots.
Yes.
In this case, it doesn't sound like we would have too many dots. You would have the top level operation, and then you would that dot type, and then the other things would be.
Yeah, that's true. We just introduce a new type. Yeah, that's probably true.
But it will be at the same level, So that's.
Yeah, that's also true.
Unless if we think that the number of parameters or things that we change, then we could add another level of nesting. We could do like type and then like we do for other things.
I know.
There we would have an extra level of nesting. I don't know about this topic enough to know whether that would be necessary or not.
Okay. I'll summarize this and send out an email for more opinions.
Cool.
Sounds good?
Thanks,
okay.
Jonah.
Sure.
Thanks for bringing it up.
Yeah, thanks for all the opinions.
All right.
Yeah, for sure.
I appreciate you explaining this. I read some things stuff like that, but that was a good explanation.
Anything else you want to chat about? I saw someone jumped into the call for a brief moment of time, and then that person seemed to have left.
Huh.
Yeah, I don't know who he is.
Yes, looked like someone from outside.
I probably just pause and ask.
Yeah, person is gone now, so we don't know.
That's okay. Is there anything else?
I don't think so. So there was one action item from last time for me to send out an email about the allocatable resources flag.
Okay.
I did send out an email. We had some discussion, and that has been merged since. So just to follow up on that.
Sweet. Awesome. So that stuff has landed, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Awesome.
Yeah, we have the random sorter and the allocatable change in master. It's not the API related, but
Did we have did we have documentation written for it?
There is documentation for the allocatable flag. I'm not sure about the random sorter though.
Okay.
I'm sure we have some nominal documentation in the flags themselves.
Okay.
But I suspect there may not be much beyond that.
Random sorter is our top secret.
no. I think it's worth at some point writing about this, like an allocation page or something like that, explaining starvation and then how you could fix that and that stuff.
Yeah, totally. Okay, cool.
That would be a good place to mention this.
Anything else?
Not on my end.
Never mind.
I guess we can end early then.
All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Together.
Thank you. Well, yeah, thank you. I feel we should have asked more people to join. This becomes like, yeah.
No, that's good. I mean, we got to understand that, and then like you have some proposals to send to the mailing list, and then we can.
Yeah. I probably should add it early.
Okay.
Cool.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.